Hello everyone, welcome to the Departamento Loratorum. My name is Max, and today I'd like to talk to you about Space Marines. I've recently made some videos about Space Marine chapters and Chaos Space Marine warbands to base your army around, and in those videos I'll often bring up how you can create your own custom chapter or warband, and ideas or inspirations that you can take from these canon groups to aid you in doing that. Many people have also left comments describing their awesome custom warbands or chapters, and all that has inspired me to make this video diving into the custom lore aspect of the Warhammer hobby more directly and giving you 10 tips for how to create your own custom Space Marine chapter. These tips will be mostly focused on the narrative and general concepts for your chapter, with a few going into things like color schemes. So if you're looking for what detachment you should pick, I won't be going into that, especially since in 10th edition detachments are not chapter locked and war gear is free, so we have a lot more freedom in those areas, for better and for worse. This is going to be a nice, fun, relaxed video, a bit more loose and less scripted than my normal style of content. It's more of an excuse for me to talk about something I love doing. I've always loved creating my own custom lore, and not just in Warhammer. I love any setting that gives you the freedom to create your own story and try out your own ideas in it, leaving edges of the map unexplored and open for you to fill in, so to speak. And Warhammer in all its forms, 40k, AOS, fantasy, is just really great about this, even encouraging it. It's one of the reasons that I love it so much and ended up making videos about the setting to share that love with all of you. I will be focusing on Space Marine chapters in this video, not just because Space Marines are popular, but because with all of the successor chapters that Games Workshop has created over the years, there are a ton of examples to help illustrate my points. I will try to keep these tips general enough that they can also apply to other factions, but if you want to see me do videos with more specific ideas for those other factions, please let me know in the comments. Also, these are going to be more general tips, not hard and fast rules, so don't feel like you're forced to follow them. They're your models, you do what makes you the happiest. And without any further ado, that leads us into our first and most important tip. Number 1, above all else, have fun. Warhammer is a game, and games are supposed to be fun. And the custom chapter that you make and decide to play with as your army is a big part of that. You want to make sure that you enjoy the ideas that you are putting into this custom chapter. You want to make sure that they are things that you find fun, even if some of the ideas might not be the technical quote-unquote best thing to do. Come up with a weird color scheme, use suboptimal units, just as long as you are enjoying them and having a good time. Don't let me or anyone else tell you different. You do you. You're not writing a book for mass consumption, you're creating a chapter that you're going to play with. So always remember, you are the primary audience for them. There is the obvious caveat to not be rude or offensive to people in real life. Warhammer is a social game, and if you act like a jerk, then people are not going to want to play with you. But while it is very easy to say, just have fun, the other tips on this list are going to focus more on helping you figure out how to make a custom chapter that you find fun. And that leads us into tip number 2, find your hook. When I say hook, I am referring to the concept, units, playstyle, what have you about your army that grabs you in and keeps you hooked. This could be specific units, like maybe you really like Assault Intercessors and Jump Pack Intercessors and want to make a chapter focused around them. Maybe you really like Space Marine vehicles and want to make a chapter that uses a lot of those. It could also be a combat style. Maybe you prefer using more psychic powers or prefer using a lot of heavy weapons and you want that to be what your chapter is focused on. There can be a lot of overlap between the units and playstyle as well. A hook can also be more narrative or conceptual in nature. It could be the story of the chapter, different things they've gone through, characters, their organization, their origin or theming. Look at something like the Crimson Fists. They don't really have any units that they're known for using specifically, but people love them because of their engaging story with the Battle of Rindsworld and coming back from almost total destruction. You can also combine these in multiple ways. Look at the Blood Angels. Some people love them because they really love jump pack and assault-based combat. Other people love them because they like the sort of space vampire fighting against the beast within narrative that they provide. Both are totally valid. The hook will also often be the thing that you use to describe your chapter to other people. Stuff like saying, oh yes, they're hardcore siege specialists. Oh, they are an old chapter looking for their mysterious lost origin. While the hook may be the main thing you like about your chapter and the main thing you use to describe and get their ideas across, it's not the only part of it, which leads us to tip number 3. Variety is the spice of life. Space Marine chapters in Warhammer 40k are units of 1,000 warriors and are built to be a fully contained, fully functional fighting machine. Even the most specialized chapters are able to engage in pretty much every type of combat. Look at something like the Raven Guard. While they focus more on stealth, they still maintain weapons like Centurions in case they need to smash somebody's face in. So just because you pick a hook to be your main focus, don't feel like that has to be the only part of your chapter. If, for example, you're focused more on assault warfare, you can still throw in a few aggressors and hellblasters because, well, it makes sense. What if they need them during their frontal assaults? However, if you know that you dislike certain units and will never use them, you can just say that your chapter does not use them. The Black Templars, for example, include no Psychers among their ranks, so they can never take Librarians. You could say it's a cultural thing, like the White Scars not using Dreadnoughts as much. Or you can make it part of your chapter history, like say they don't use as many Terminators because they lost a lot of their Terminator armor in a disastrous campaign. Variety can also apply to personality and character traits as well. While your chapter may have a general stereotype about how they act and behave, having one or two different characters who act differently can be a great way to both illustrate how the chapter normally functions, as well as to create those interesting little contrasts and conflicts. It can also help make those characters more memorable, especially if you're doing something like a narrative campaign and want to see how a captain or lieutenant progresses throughout it. As I've said in some previous videos, more freedom and more options is always better, so I always like to keep the door open for doing different things with my Space Marine chapter. Now on to tip number 4, look for inspirations. Many canon chapters in Warhammer 40k are inspired by real groups or people from history. For example, the Space Wolves are inspired very heavily by Vikings, the Ultramarines by the Greeks and the Romans, and the Dark Angels by medieval knights, especially from Arthurian legend. When you are creating your own custom chapter, you might find it helpful to look for real-life historical references, or to take inspiration from other fictional universes that you enjoy. This is both a great way to express yourself, as well as to have a sort of built-in, pre-written background for your chapter that you can draw from. A Celtic chapter, like the Emperor's Spears, did not have to create the term druid for their specialist marines whole cloth. They could take it from real-life historical druids. You can do the same with your own custom chapter. Of course, you can always go a little bit more light with your inspirations, take inspirations from multiple sources. You don't have to make a one-to-one copy of something. I would also recommend looking for inspiration within Warhammer 40k itself. Once you have the general idea for your chapter, look for chapters that are similar to it. Like, if you wanted to do a chapter themed on ancient Greece, take a look at chapters like the Minotaurs or the Iron Snakes who already exist and have that theming. See how those chapters organize, function, and are portrayed within Warhammer, and take inspiration from that. See what you like and see what you don't like, and use it to make your own custom chapter. With so much information, both within the Warhammer universe and within real-life history, there's no reason for you to have to come up with something totally on your own. But, talking about taking inspiration from within universe, let's move into tip number 5, origin equals opportunity. Going into the origin of your Space Marine chapter is one of the easiest ways to flesh out their lore. Think about which legion they're descended from, how that might affect their character. Do they act exactly like their founder, or do they try to be different from them? And if they are different from them, is that because they were founded for a specific reason, to fight a specific enemy? Is it because they were founded from Marines who were kind of outcast among their chapter? Or could it be due to them fighting alongside a different group of Space Marines shortly after their creation? The Genesis chapter is a good example of the first. They act pretty much just like red-colored Ultramarines. You know what you're gonna get. The Mortifactors, while they mostly follow the Codex, do have some differences which put them at odds with their founder, the Ultramarines. And a lot of the Black Templars customs were due to Sigismund fighting alongside the World Eaters during the Great Crusade. You can also go into when the chapter was created. Are they an ancient chapter with a lot of history and relics, or are they new up-and-comers looking to prove themselves? Why was the chapter founded in the first place? Does the chapter defend a specific region of space, like the Iron Snakes? Are they wide-ranging crusaders, like the Black Templars? Or are they part of a brotherhood of other chapters with close ties to them, like the Celestial Lions? Has the chapter's origin been completely forgotten, like the Blood Ravens, who, because of this lost history, seek to gather and preserve as much knowledge as they can? You can take these early events in a chapter's history and use them to set up who they have eventually become in the era Indomitus when you are playing with them. For choosing who your chapter is descended from, as far as first founding legions, it's obviously whatever one you enjoy. If you are more assault focused, you might want to go with something like the Space Wolves or the Blood Angels. If you want to use a lot more esoteric weaponry, maybe go with like the Dark Angels. If you want to go for a more balanced jack of all trades, maybe go for something like the Ultramarines or Imperial Fists. But really there are no wrong choices, and plenty of chapters have successors that act pretty much nothing like them, like for example the Salamanders and the Black Dragons. As for Descendants of Traitor Legions, you could do that as well. There is nothing wrong with it. There are canon chapters who are suspected to be descended from traitor stock, such as the Blood Ravens and the Death Eagles. I would say if you are going to do that, make it ambiguous, at least to the wider Imperium. Say like they're descended from an unknown chapter, or they claim descent from this chapter, but the genetic markers don't match, and they refuse to answer any questions about it. That can also be a good source of drama, like say they are looking for an ancient origin that they would rather not know the answers to, or that they are fighting to reclaim their honor after their Primarch's ancient betrayal. But now that we've talked a bit about the in-universe creation of a chapter, let's move on to a more out-of-universe tip with tip number 6, color schemes, test and K.I.S.S. So obviously a color scheme is an important part of any army. There is no wrong choice for a color scheme, it's whatever colors you like and enjoy. You can maybe look at existing successor chapters for a specific legion to see if they have a general theming for colors, like a lot of Blood Angels descendants use a lot of red, but don't feel like you're forced to use those colors. There's nothing saying you couldn't make a Blood Angels descendant that was blue or green or yellow or something like that. I would just always recommend, if you are picking colors and a scheme, always test them first before you move on to painting an army. In America at least, a squad of Infernus Marines is very cheap on eBay, so you can buy 5 of them and then test out your different color scheme ideas. See how it looks, see if you like it, see if you maybe want to vary up a color here or there. Just always make sure you know what a color scheme is going to be like and that you actually like the look of it and the feel of painting it before you move on to spreading it across a whole army. And the last piece of advice for this one, K.I.S.S, stands for Keep It Simple Stupid. Try to make sure that the scheme is easy to replicate across an army for you, for your skill level specifically. If you are a brand new painter, I would recommend keeping it very simple. Look at the 9 original Loyalist Legions. It's all one basic color for the armor, a trim color, and then maybe some little accent decoration colors here and there. They don't get too crazy with quartered schemes or different armor panels suddenly being a new color. Obviously, there is nothing wrong with that, and if you really enjoy painting a different scheme and you've tested it and you know that you like it, go for it. And if you're looking to make this army more of a painting challenge, don't be afraid to ramp up the complexity. But going back to test, just always make sure that it's something you know you enjoy painting and are able to actually do to a standard that you're happy with. Moving on to tip number 7, have at least one strength. This might seem very obvious, but you want to make sure that your custom Space Marine chapter has something that they're good at, or something that they're known for. They don't have to be the absolute best at this, but it should be something that they are very skilled at. Ideally, this would be the hook. Like, let's look at the Star Phantoms. They're known for using a lot of heavy ranged weaponry, and they're good at it. They're not the best heavy weapons users, they don't have the most esoteric weaponry, but they're really, really good at knocking walls down and blowing stuff up. So if you were trying to make a chapter more focused on heavy weaponry or siege warfare, I'd take inspiration from them. This is probably the most well-duh tip on this list. It's probably the easiest thing to do anyway, find out something that your guys are good at, but you just want to avoid coming up with something that's too bland or generic. This doesn't also have to be a combat style. It could be something more along the lines of what the Ultramarines do, where they're just sort of jack of all trades, fairly good at logistics, but they can do everything well. That is a strength. Being able to do everything well, even if not the best, is a good strength to have. It can also be more narrative focused, like the Crimson Fists being survivors against the odds, or the Black Templars being the ultimate crusaders. You can also have multiple strengths, don't feel like you only need to be good at one thing. I just wouldn't try to overdo it, don't make yourself good at absolutely everything, which we'll get into in a later tip. But now let's move into the corollary. Tip number 8, have at least one weakness. While you obviously want your chapter to be strong, it's probably best not to have them be overpowered, so it's good to think of something they're not quite as good at. You don't want it to be something they're absolutely terrible with, but having a weakness or something that they're not as expert at can make them seem a little bit more well-rounded. This might be a logical corollary to their strength, like, say, going back to a heavy weapons-focused chapter, maybe they just aren't as good at melee combat. They don't see it as quite as useful or honorable as some other chapters and don't put as much effort into it. They'll still fight in melee if they have to, but they're not going to be fielding masses of assault marines. It could be related to some sort of biological defect, like the Red Thirst and Black Rage of the Blood Angels, or the Curse of the Wolfen of the Space Wolves. It could also again be more of a narrative or character-focused trait, like the Dark Angels being seen as untrustworthy due to their quest for the Fallen. I would also be careful not to overdo it here. While you do not want to make a chapter that is stupidly strong, you also don't want to end up making a chapter that is really weak. Also, just because you make something a weakness doesn't mean it can make your chapter quote-unquote bad or less interesting. For example, prior to the era Indomitus, the Scythes of the Emperor were recovering from the loss of their homeworld to the Tyranids and were reduced down to about 100 Marines. That is undoubtedly a weakness, but it can also be a great narrative hook to keep you interested in their struggle and attempts to rebuild. Now let's go into tip number 9, keep an eye out for Mary Sue. To those of you who don't know, Mary Sue, also called Marty Stew for male versions, is a term for a type of character who has no weaknesses or flaws. It comes from Paula Smith in 1973. She wrote a parody short story called A Trekkie's Tale with Lieutenant Mary Sue to satirize this type of character who was absolutely perfect and everyone loved her. It's a common thing in fandom spaces, but you'll also see it applied to characters in mainstream franchises too. This is why I recommended not having too many strengths and at least one logical weakness for your chapter, so you don't end up making something too overpowered. While of course you are the primary audience for your custom chapter, if you're anything like me, you will probably want to share it with some people, and you don't want them thinking you've made some sort of OP, original character, donut steel, super powerful, great, best buddies with Primarch Gulliman group of Space Marines. It's more of a personal thing. You know, one person's Mary Sue is another person's well-written character. I would just recommend not only getting advice from other people if you share your Space Marines with them, but also taking a step back, looking at them and thinking, if I read about this chapter and these characters in a book, would I think that they are too powerful for their own good? This is more of a narrative tip because the dice aren't really going to care how overpowered you say that captain is. He'll fail his saves if they want him to fail his saves. We have seen stuff like this in Warhammer's history. The 5th edition Space Marine Codex is infamous for portraying the Ultramarines as essentially flawless, can do nothing wrong, beloved by everyone, and it had a very negative reaction in the community, which is actually still present in some parts of it. And of course, your custom chapter is not going to go out to hundreds of thousands of millions of people for consumption, but me personally, I just don't really like the idea of making a Mary Sue. If you really enjoy that, again, see tip number 1. This is again just something that I find useful when I'm making up a custom Space Marine chapter. Sort of take a step back, look, and make sure I'm not making anything that's just too insane. And now let's get into my last tip. Tip number 10, always keep an open mind. Warhammer lore and gameplay is constantly evolving, and so are you as a person. So just because you create a custom chapter today doesn't mean that you won't change the units that you like, your playstyle, you won't find different pieces of lore that you want to incorporate. Don't be afraid to make edits to your custom chapter, to add stuff in, to change up the origin, to change up their combat style, to change up the units they like to focus on. Even canon chapters have changed throughout time. We've talked about the Ultramarines bouncing around from being just jack of all trades to the most OP best thing ever. The Salamanders didn't all have uniformly black skin until 4th or 5th edition, and many of the chapters in the Badab War were introduced all the way back in Rogue Trader, but it took until 2010 for some of them to get their modern lore in the Forge World Badab War books. Just keep an open mind, keep learning, keep reading, keep seeing if the things you enjoy change, keep seeing if there's new stuff that speaks to you, and incorporate that into your custom chapter, and I think you'll have a far better experience than if you make something now and attempt to stick with it for the next few years or even decades. So there are 10 tips for creating your own Space Marine chapter. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you want to see more of these videos for other factions, or videos coming up with custom lore for minor factions without a lot of lore of their own, or even creating some fully original chapters, please let me know in the comments. And please share some of your own tips as well, and continue to comment about your own custom Warhammer armies. I love reading about them. There's so much creativity in this hobby, and it is really inspiring to see. And always remember, if you love your custom chapter, or warband, or craft world, or whatever, don't let anyone, including me, tell you different. These are just some tips that I find helpful, things that I like to keep in mind when I create a custom army, and I just wanted to share them with all of you to use as you see fit. I also recently hit 1,000 subscribers while making this video. Thank you all so much for this. I'm incredibly honored. I know this is cheesy, but I really could not do it without all of you. Your positivity and kindness keeps me going, and I hope to keep making these videos for a long time. If this video inspired you to pick up some more models for your own custom chapter, I have an affiliate link with Geekery Games that you can use to get 5% off eligible orders. Just put in the code DEPARTLORE at checkout. Each purchase also helps the channel, so if you're looking for a discount on some Warhammer kits, please check them out. I'll put a link to them in the description below. My next video will be on some more successor chapters to base your army around, so look forward to that. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. For now, thank you and have a great day. Bye!